John Kozlar is with us. He wants to be mayor of the city of Chicago. And John, nice to have you with us. You are just turned 30 years old in December, and there's a lot of people watching this, and they wonder, how can a 30-year-old think he can run the city of Chicago?
Right. Well, the biggest thing is that we need to make a change right now. We keep electing the same people over and over in Chicago, and nothing ever changes. And the people who have all this political experience tends not to be good experience. I mean, we were talking about the same issues in the year 2019 that we were talking about in the 1980s, and that's crime, education, and city finances. And I think Chicago is ready for a difference. And the team that I'm going to put together is going to be the best and brightest, and it's going to be somebody who's not connected to this political corrupt network that we've been experiencing for too long.
How would you find those people?
Yeah, well, I think if we get elected, that people will be excited that Chicago's taking a new direction. And
You'll get a lot of phone calls.
We'll get a lot. We'll get a lot of phone calls, and we'll recruit from all over. And the biggest thing is Chicago has a lot of people in the city who simply want to go into a different direction, and they feel that they're left out of the current administration or administrations from the past. And I think that if we can elect somebody like myself, who's fresh, who's young, who's new to politics, that more people will then be inspired to get involved.
Mm-hmm. Now, there are those people who don't know you. They say, well, why didn't he start by running for alderman? And you did run for alderman.
I did run for alderman.
Twice.
Yeah. Yes, we ran in 2011. I was 21 years old. I was a senior in college at the University of Chicago, and we ran on $520. People said, hey, you have no chance. But you know what? Out of 3 candidates, we came in second place. And fast forward 4 years later in 2015, the incumbent alderman then stepped down because they knew we were running again. Mm-hmm. And then here comes the New York Yankees with the Dailies, which is the well-known family in Chicago. It ran against Patrick Daley Thompson, and they spent over $650,000 to win that seat for alderman. And we know what we did. We made a runoff for the first time in over 70 years in the heart and soul of Chicago in the 11th Ward. And that was because of the community members worked together, and we shook the boat, and people just had enough of the same old.
Because of that, again, people who are casually observing this race, or maybe they're members of the national media, they know that the name Bill Daley is running.
Right.
Now, again, you've encountered the Daley family, as you've referenced. Would you be surprised if Bill Daley does not make the runoff?
No, I won't be surprised, because I think Chicago simply does not want another Daley. We had 2 Daleys already, and look in the situation we're in with the last Daley administration. We are in a budget deficit. We are in a financial crisis as far as it comes to our education, and our crime is through the roof. And that's because our city has been neglected. We continue to go along with this pay-to-play politics, and they didn't put Chicagoans first. They put their families and friends first. And lo and behold, here comes all the corruption unraveling in the city of Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Now, you decided to run for mayor when Rahm Emanuel was running for re-election.
Yes, so we announced on May 8th, and we were one of, I think, at that point, 7 or 8 candidates, and Rahm Emanuel was still in the race. And a lot of the people who you see jump in after Rahm Emanuel dropped out, in my personal opinion, they were afraid to stand up for Chicago. And they were not willing to challenge Rahm Emanuel. And I don't think Chicago needs somebody who's afraid to stick up for our communities.
Again, going back to the age issue, you say you're going to look for the best and the brightest. But what are you going to be doing literally on day one? I mean, you're going to be inundated with so many issues. Where are you going to start?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing for me is probably our crime. So the crime in Chicago, there's just way too much tension going on between our communities and police department. And I think our police department is doing a great job. It's just they don't really have that support when it comes to City Hall, and they are not allowed to do their job in which they know how to do.
In what way are they stymied?
Yeah, so we tend to put a target on their back, so we have a lot of restrictions against them to simply police, right? So when we had the Laquan McDonald shooting, unfortunately, that was a negative in Chicago, and instead of holding that one officer accountable, we painted this broad brush in the city and said, hey, all of this Chicago Police Department is in the wrong, which is not true. I think the vast majority of the citizens who are policing our streets are doing a fine job. And yes, there are bad apples that we have to hold accountable, but what the current administration did is they undermine them. They have so many things in place that are going to make their jobs a lot different.
So would you not support the consent decree? Would you challenge the consent decree by the
Yeah, I mean, there are some things that I like and some things I don't. The things that I do like are the training. I think police officers will welcome more training because there are different tactics and skill sets that evolve over time, and the more training that police officers have, the better equipped they are. What I don't support is that every time a police officer pulls out his or her gun, that they then have to write a report, because now you're taking them off of the streets and doing more of the paperwork. And they don't want to do that, nor can the city of Chicago afford to do that, because we have a lot of crime in the city in which they have to concentrate on in the streets.
Is there anyone that you are running against that you would like to have in your cabinet should you win?
Yeah, I think anybody who announced before Rahm Emanuel dropped out are all independent thinkers, and all of us offer something to the table. So I think in working with those individuals, if they want, because I will open up my doors to them to see if they want.
Would that include Gary McCarthy?
Yeah, that will include everybody. Yeah, anybody who announced before Rahm Emanuel dropped out. And I think all of us working together, we all have important issues that we want to see change, and we all have our own skill sets. It's just when we work together that will do very well. And there's a lot of candidates, again, there's probably 7 or 8 who announced before Rahm Emanuel dropped out, and each of us are intelligent in our own way. And if we work together and bring all of our skill sets to the table, then we can literally change the direction of our city.
And what would, other than crime, what would you say the next 2 or 3 major issues are? And let's kind of focus maybe on the big issue, and that's city pensions. I mean, how are we going to deal with a pension?
Yeah, so I'm the only candidate talking about this. And my specific plan is that if you are a new employee starting in the year 2020, meaning you've never worked for the city of Chicago, you have to go on a 401k plan, because we cannot continue to add to our budget deficit. And what that means is if you are a current employee or a retiree, you are pretty much grandfathered in to your pension system because you've been paying into it. It's just we had politicians over the years gamble that away, and a big gambler of that was the Daley family. They took care of their families to invest in real estate that lost us a lot of money. And my whole thing is, why are family members of politicians making those decisions? That's a conflict of interest. So the pension system, again, if you're a new employee starting in the year 2020, you're going on a 401k plan. And what that does, it stops the bleeding. And we're not adding any more to the current deficit. The other thing we have to do is have a forensic audit of all of our books in the city of Chicago. Rahm Emanuel said he was going to do that in 2011. It was his big campaign idea. And of course, once he gets elected, he didn't do that. He didn't do any auditing of our books. And we need an unbiased forensic audit. And we have the big 4 accounting firms in Chicago. So I would recruit those best and brightest from the accounting perspective and have them look at all of our books.
Bill Daley has raised over $4 million. How much have you raised?
Yeah, $4 million less than him. The thing that I hate in politics is money, because money in politics makes it corrupt. And I'm somebody who believes in the grassroots campaigning, where we go door to door, we attend forums, we talk to the people face to face, because the voters, they want to see somebody who's talking to them in a specific environment and not hiding behind commercials or the newspapers, because that's what candidates like Bill Daley, who have all this money, are doing. They're not talking to people one-on-one, and people are fed up with that. And I'm a candidate who is going to all the forums, like I said, but not only that, but talking to them face to face. And you're going to get people who like you and get people who don't, but I think they respect you at the end of the day because you're giving them time to speak with you.
What role does Ed Burke play in this campaign?
Well, Ed Burke is just simply a part of that politics as usual. I mean, these individuals, they, again, put their friends and families first. They make our city look terrible, and I'm sure he did a great job for many people. It's just you can't be in one office for 50 years. I'm sorry, because then you become accustomed to that position, and then you start doing these pay-to-play politics and start caring about your business and not about the residents of the city. And we have 4 candidates who are tied to that in this race for mayor, and they need to not be elected, because if they are elected, we're going to continue that network of corruption. Because once you're in that network of corruption, like 4 of the candidates, you don't get out of it. And they're all still have ties to this past. And if they get elected, nothing will change in the city of Chicago.
Mount Carmel High School, University of Chicago, and John Marshall Law School.
Yes.
What did you study at the U of C?
At University of Chicago, I was a political science major. And also took pre-med classes for 4 years, and then decided to go into law school. I played baseball at the University of Chicago for all 4 years and got a lot of really good experience. Have lifelong.
In high school as well, did you?
High school as well, yeah. That high school baseball.
What position?
So I was a pitcher.
Pitcher.
And my high school baseball taught me so much as far as my coaches, and they not only taught you about things on the field but off the field, as far as mental toughness, handling adversity.
Are you South Side? Are you a Sox fan?
Yeah, so grew up, born and raised 5 minutes from the White Sox Park, and hopefully we'll do better this year with the ball game going on. And it's just they're in a rebuilding phase, but
You know, I've asked the other candidates who have been here. I've asked them to name the turning point in their life. And again, all of them are older than you, considerably older than you. But at age 30, has there been what you have described as a turning point in your life yet?
yeah, I mean, we go through different ups and downs in life. I think the turning point for me was running a nonprofit organization on the South Side where we had 550 boys and girls ages 3 to 13.
Little League Baseball.
Little League baseball and softball, and I was the president of this organization at a very young age, and I was I think sophomore in college, and I didn't know what I was doing, but you know what? I knew that the kids in Chicago who play baseball deserve just as good as facilities and playing fields as the suburb kids. And I think, and what I did, we rolled up our sleeves, and after 8 years, we reinvested over $650,000. And these young boys and girls got to play on really state-of-the-art baseball fields. We got brand new infield, we got brand new outfield grass, new fencing, and they have home run fences. They have a scoreboard, 28-foot scoreboard. So we also got to announce their names during the games. So what we created in this atmosphere is that they deserve the best, right? So then when they get older, hopefully they'll do the same for the next generation. And that inspired me because we should be investing in our youth at an early age, regardless of what zip code they come from.
And how successful do you think you would be trying to lure a major company to come to Chicago? And what do you think about the incentives that cities provide and Chicago has provided to get big companies to come here?
Well, that's a great question. I think a lot of businesses are staying away from Chicago because of the corruption in our city, because of the politics in our city, and because of the crime. The crime is out of control. And a lot of companies, if you're not from Chicago and you're from a different state, what we hear is that there's shootings going on, there's violence, and that Chicago's not safe. And some of them are right. But if I am elected, I think that will inspire people that, Chicago's taking a new direction. They're not going to be the politics as usual. The people are waking up.
When you say corruption, you decided to run when Rahm Emanuel was still planning to run for re-election. Mm-hmm. What is the corruption that you will lay at his doorstep? Well, not just a bad decision, but corruption.
Corruption. So the corruption is this network. So what they built over time, they gave out a lot of these contracts to certain individuals. Those individuals then employed certain other more people. So they built up this arsenal of this network, of this play-to-play.
And when you say they, you mean?
The politicians, so aldermen, mayors. You have some state representatives who are all in cahoots because they are part of the same team. And what they do, and what we've been seeing, is they pay money at certain events or they fund campaigns. And then all of a sudden, recently in the news, some of these politicians are brought to the light with FBI investigations. Mm-hmm. And you see where the money is going. You saw the payback of Susanna Mendoza. You saw Tony Preckwinkle pay money back. This is that network where they're all the same team. They fund each other. And what they do while doing that, they put themselves first. And then they forget about communities. And that's why the South Side looks like the South Side. That's why the West Side of Chicago looks like the West Side of Chicago. There's abandoned properties, boarded up storefronts. Whereas if you go downtown, those are the only individuals that are taken care of.
But in the case of Rahm Emanuel, nothing went to him directly, did it?
We'll see what the wiretaps are going to show, right? But I think that Rahm Emanuel, his biggest thing that he is faulted for is he put downtown Chicago above all other neighborhoods. And that's why all these neighborhoods were left behind. And Chicago has the greatest citizens in the world and one of the most beautiful cities. It's just most of the residents have been forgotten about. We invested way more than we should have in downtown and left the neighborhoods to fend for themselves.
What would you do to improve opportunities for low-income housing, affordable housing throughout the city?
Well, the biggest thing is there are already many nonprofit organizations who have been doing these things on the ground level. Mm-hmm. What we have to do as a city hall is listen to these organizations on how best to move forward. Because you have the real estate developers, and then you have the citizens of Chicago who may not be able to afford living here, but we're the ones that are doing that from a city government because we increase property taxes for many, many years. And when you increase property taxes, you then put that on the landlord, and the landlord then increases the rent, and then generations of Chicagoans are then pushed out because we can't afford to live here. So I will not increase property taxes in my 4 years in running as the mayor of Chicago. Not many candidates have made that distinction, because you have somebody like Bill Daley who has these commercials saying property tax freeze. But then when he was questioned about it, he only said this is only for his first year in office. He doesn't put that in his commercials, but he was pressed with that by the Sun-Times editorial board. So think about that. His years 2, 3, and 4, if elected mayor, he's going to increase people's property taxes. And that's not right, because that's just going back to Rahm Emanuel's years. That's going back to Mayor Daley, Richard M. Daley's years. And we can't afford to keep doing that. We can't keep pushing the can down the road.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an attorney by trade. I work in the corporate sector, private in cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity. Okay, you're a 30-year-old lawyer. Are you married, single?
Still single.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so most 30-year-old lawyers, I mean, they're young. It's Friday night. How
Right.
do you go out and relax? And would that cramp your style if you were mayor? You'd be traveling with all these entourage.
No, yeah. So the biggest thing for me is staying humble. So I grew up in the South Side of Chicago. I'm not somebody who was.
You live at home?
No. So I live with my.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some of
right.
your friends live at home.
Some of my friends live at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you live at home?
No, so I live with my
Okay, okay.
I live with my brother.
Okay.
And what we do is, I'm not necessarily one of these partiers. I'm not gonna say I'm always a nerd, but I concentrate a lot on education. I watch the news a lot. I think that through my upbringing helped me out as far as not being a big partier or anything. So nothing against it.
So what
It's
do you
just
do
not
for
part of it.
what do you do for relaxation?
Yeah, so I still play recreational softball. I like to swim. I just completed my first triathlon in August. And the biggest
Like movies, TV shows?
I don't watch as much TV as I should, or maybe I shouldn't watch, or maybe what I'm not watching is good. But I like to concentrate on the news a lot. I know that doesn't sound really fun, but I like to movies. I would say maybe 3 times a year I'll go to the theaters.
What's the one thing you want voters to know about you when they walk into the polls?
That I offer a fresh, uncorrupt, new idea Chicago in order to move our city into a different direction. That I don't have any political experience, because these people who we keep electing have a bunch of political experience, and look at what we're in right now. And the other big thing is that I am somebody who's going to listen to people. I'm not going to step on a pedestal like the other politicians once they get elected and look down upon the communities. I'm going to work with the communities.
And how do you want to be judged?
That's gonna be determined by time. I think by staying humble and staying grounded, that I will never consider myself better than anybody else, and that's hopefully I'll be judged later on.
John Kozlar has been our guest. He wants to be mayor of Chicago.